Hey everyone, welcome back to Poetry Hall Pass. Trying to just have a little coda about the story of English to finish up some thoughts of the last lecturette. Now, I just said the story of English, and there's a great, 7-part PBS series. I'm saying 7 without looking it up, but it's a multi part series, probably 7 or 9 parts, called The Story of English, which goes through the entire, history of the English language, and it's really fascinating. It has a nice stop in New Orleans and about our New Orleans dialect along the way. But here's something interesting, right? There were certain poets and other people, perhaps in the early 20th century, right? I'm Mr. Evans, your English teacher. I got an undergraduate degree in English. There were teachers and thinkers at that time, early part of last century, that actually wanted to rename English departments American departments, get a degree in American, because they felt like the American language was becoming distinct enough from British English. Now, whether that should happen or not, I don't know. English is only 2 syllables, American 3, longer. That's up for debate. But what's important is to sort of see the shift in some of the poets that we move across from, English of John Keats, and then a little bit later, Christina Rossetti, and how that really switches as we go into the 20th century and American English kind of becomes its own thing, right? And you really see that tradition in Walt Whitman, who really sort of launches American English poetry. And then there's going to be a lineage that goes from there and becomes more modern. One kind of fun thing is, there's so many poets that we won't be able to get to because, as I said much earlier, out of the millions of poets that have lived, we get to do this many. But there's an American poet called Sylvia Plath who wrote these poems, and they're sort of very visceral and gritty. It's really not a good word for it, but she has a poem called "Daddy," and about her father, and you would think that if you heard her read these poems, it would be sort of like scary or something. But if you actually hear a tape of her reading her work, again, we're talking about Sylvia Plath, it still just sounds like, just an old-fashioned person. I don't know what. It's not threatening or scary at all. And then, much later, when we get to like the beat poets, and you hear Jack Kerouac reading from On the Road with Steve Allen, all of a sudden it sounds completely modern. Like if you heard it now, you'd be like, okay, that just sounds like a guy that I would hear talking right now. So yeah, this shift into American English, and I should note that Sylvia Plath is actually American. But as we move into this, to the language, it starts to become more what we know is modern American English, right? So that's the transition we're going through. I'm coming to you from the room in my house that we call the Cowboy Room because it's sort of unusual for New Orleans because of this really dark paneling, and then especially unusual, this weird parquet ceiling, which I may have mentioned before. But the odd thing, life is weird sometimes and it's coincidences. My 2 friends used to own this house, and it's 2 ladies, and they were originally from Reno, Nevada. And I always thought it was weird because when I was like, did y'all do this? Because this seems like more out west than a New Orleans interior. Am I still talking about interiors of houses? Yeah. And they were the ones who came up with the name Cowboy Room as well. But basically, at that point, I had really never been out west other than California itself. And eventually, I got to go visit them in Reno after they moved back. And lo and behold, I was correct. Like this, there are places like this. We ended up going to Lake Tahoe, which is only like 40 minutes from Reno. That's the cool thing out there. You can just go 40 minutes and get to Lake Tahoe. Whereas here from New Orleans, we go to 40 minutes and we just get to Slidell. But there's places like this. We stayed at a like little hotel in Lake Tahoe, and lo and behold, the ceiling is exactly like this. One other fun thing, if you ever do get to Lake Tahoe, they have these massive trees, and like this is just a pine cone from a tree from Lake Tahoe. And it's so awesome because you can just pick up like 50 of these and take them home. And then you just have souvenirs for all your friends, and you didn't even have to pay anything. Really cool. Okay. Why do I mention this? Because right now we're transitioning from more British English into what will become American English. And then we're going to focus mostly as we go forward into what's sometimes called the Golden Triangle, which was the movement between poets and artists from New York to New Orleans and then out west, specifically San Francisco, most specifically, but California and the West in general. And we'll focus on points of those triangles coming up. But quickly, this paper you're looking at, you know, the Venn diagram, which I'm sure you know what that is, and we'll put up a model. You're kind of overlapping two things, either two poets that we've looked at, could be any of the poets we've looked at. And then the even more possibly fun option is the one where you take some music, either that's been in our units or that you've got on your own, and you sort of make a soundtrack to some of the poetry with the music that you're bringing to it. All right, I'm really looking forward to what you guys are going to come up with. And on that, we'll say aloha for now.